Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue's 39-game non-conference win streak came to an end on Tuesday night in a decisive loss at Marquette. We'll look at what went wrong for the Boilermakers and what it means in the big picture today before discussing the latest buzz around the future of Purdue football as it enters another national TV game on Friday night. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. Plenty to talk about. Come join the conversation and send in your questions for the show there on Twitter, or you can email the show, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode throughout this season. But Purdue loses up in Milwaukee 76-58, a game that was defined pretty quickly by Purdue turning the ball over, a theme that has been common for Purdue in losses over the past 5 years, is probably common for a lot of teams in losses. When you turn the ball over, you're not helping yourself win a basketball game. You have to give Marquette some real credit here. Marquette played really well. Marquette executed on defense at a really high level. You don't often see Purdue really uncomfortable on offense, but you did in this game. You don't see Purdue knocked out of rhythm, knocked out of what it wants to do on offense a ton. But Marquette was able to do that. And that says something about Purdue, yes, but it's also a big testament to Marquette. That's a very well-coached team. Shaka Smart does a great job. It's a more experienced team than what Purdue has. Marquette kind of has the more veteran roster that maybe Purdue had a year ago. Marquette's a really solid team, and it's kind of embraced Shaka Smart's old defensive principles from he was at VCU. Marquette pressured the ball really heavily. And please note, there's a difference between just ball pressure and like a full court press, because Purdue was fine against Marquette's full court press. If there was a turnover against that, I'm not remembering it. But the ball pressure in the half court and really being aggressive, that's something that we've seen from Purdue's opponents a lot so far this year. Yale did it. Corpus Christi did it. Now we've seen Marquette do it, where they're trying to jump passing lanes. They're really trying to get into Braden Smith. They're trying to get into Fletcher Lawyer and limit what those guys are able to do, kind of daring Purdue's other guys to beat it. And, challenging Purdue to get the ball into the post with a lot of pressure in its face. Now, Purdue's done a pretty good job of that up until this point, but it didn't do a great job against Marquette. Marquette was definitely the best defensive team Purdue has faced to this point, and that's a credit to Marquette for really executing well. I think over time, it's reasonable to expect that Purdue will develop a counter to that. But for right now, that ball pressure is something that Purdue hasn't handled particularly well, and it led to these turnovers early on. And while I do think Purdue's a good offensive team this year, I don't know that Purdue has the defensive team to live with some of the pick sixes, some of the easy runouts for the opponents. Purdue has to value every opponent's basket, and when you turn the ball over and lead to easy buckets that way, it puts you in a tough spot. A lot of conversation coming out of this one about the center position. Look, it was going to be a weak point for Purdue coming into this season nonetheless. That was the most inexperienced, unproven part of Purdue's roster. And what we've seen so far with Daniel Jacobson going down is that just get further exasperated. Jacobson was probably your most likely player to become a real strength at that spot. He was probably your most likely candidate to become a bit of a breakout, so to speak. I do think Caleb Furst does some good things. He is by far your best defensive option at the 5 spot. You saw that against Marquette, with Marquette being versatile at the 5 spot. Marquette wanted to step out and shoot threes at the 5. when Caleb First was in the game, Marquette wasn't getting a lot of those looks. When Caleb First was not in the game, Marquette was getting some wide open looks for its big guy. He's probably your best scorer between Will Berg, Raleigh Burgess, and Caleb First. I'll take Caleb First there. Yes, he's limited. You saw him struggle at times to get the ball in the basket against Marquette, but he's more proven. He's more consistent at finding ways to score than the other two guys at this point. He's your best bet there. And, Matt Painter's not one who likes to switch up the lineup all willy-nilly just for the heck of it. I would not be totally stunned to see Caleb First move into that starting spot. Will Berg still has a long way to go. Raleigh Burgess still has a long way to go. I think it's important to remember when we talk about Raleigh Burgess, this is a guy who is a fringe redshirt candidate. Expecting, gangbusters things from him this year probably wasn't fair for someone who was, having very real conversations about redshirting. And just because he didn't redshirt doesn't mean that, he's ready to immediately play 20 minutes a game. I'll be curious to see what Purdue does there going forward, but it's not going to be a real strength. I don't think what Marquette did on defense is going to be able to be replicated by everyone. Really good, really athletic, physical, well-coached team. That's a lot going Marquette's way. And you have to factor in age there as well. Marquette's a very veteran team. Marquette is led by Cam Jones, is led by a lot of guys, David Joplin, who have played a lot of college basketball there. They've played a lot of basketball together. Shaka Smart's really good at coaching defense. How many of those teams are out there? There aren't a ton. But they were able to get Braden Smith out of rhythm, force him to take some tough twos, fadeaways that got him a little frustrated early on, I think. But it cut him off from getting to the rim. After Fletcher Lawyer got off to a hot start, they kind of shut off his water. And at that point, dared Purdue's other guys to beat it. And Purdue's other guys didn't. It was a bit of a welcome to the show game for those freshman guards. Jakari Harris being asked to guard Cam Jones is a big ask, but he didn't have a great day, nor did CJ Cox. Miles Colvin didn't get some shots to fall. Now, he is doing some good things defensively. 8 rebounds for him is huge. That's not something we've ever seen from Miles Colvin before. He's developing as a player, but we know he can shoot from deep. The ball handling's not there yet. There was one time where he puts the ball on the floor to go to the basket, and I think it ended up in a turnover because it just wasn't something that looked comfortable. Long term here, this isn't something that changes overnight, but he's got to figure out a way to handle the ball a little more if he wants to have a bigger role than just a spot-up shooter and defender. Cam Heide played well, hit some threes, did some good stuff defensively, but, all in all, when you look at this game, if you said before the game that Marquette was going to score 76, it's probably a little more than what you'd want, but, this wasn't a game that you were going to hold Marquette to 64 points. That's not going to be Purdue's style this year. Purdue's going to have to win some shootouts. The offense didn't come through. And, that's just part of it. Purdue's better for having played this game. It's one of those, would you rather get this stuff exposed now or just wait for January? Would you rather have more time to work on it, or would you rather just stack wins against, quad 4 opponents and feel good about yourself? Because, instead of playing Marquette, Purdue could have easily just brought Valparaiso down, won by 30, sang the fight song, felt good about yourself. But, Purdue, in less than a week, plays 2 big-time non-conference games on home floors and is doing what a lot of teams are afraid to do. I think Purdue's going to be better in the long run for that. The remarkable 39-game non-conference win streak does come to an end. A truly remarkable run. It doesn't make any sense how it lasted this long. Purdue played so many good opponents during that time that, how it got to this point is almost unbelievable. Purdue, at the start of this thing, goes to the Mohegan Sun tournament and takes down North Carolina and Villanova on back-to-back days. Goes on that big run late against Villanova to flip that thing and win the game. And then a couple weeks later, survives against NC State in one of the ugliest wins I can remember. You had the PK 85 sweep, a truly unreal moment. That weekend is one of the most shocked I've ever been as a Purdue basketball observer in a positive way. Purdue wins the best Maui field ever. Purdue goes to Toronto to outduel Bama and then takes down top-ranked Arizona and Indy. And then beats a number 2 Alabama team in Mackey Arena. It was a really impressive streak. All good things come to an end. I don't know that there's another one coming because Purdue has a lot of good non-conference games left this year. But to get that way with the way Purdue wants to schedule is just remarkable. It's kind of an anomaly. But Purdue's become better because of it. And I think it's helped Purdue kind of build its profile on a national scale, and that always helps. Up next, Purdue's got Marshall on Saturday. Kind of a weird one. A noon Saturday BTN Plus game, during the heart of football season with football all on. Obviously, Purdue plays Friday night, but really an anonymous game here. It's going to be a sleepy one, I think. You hope Purdue's ready to go. You hope Marshall's ready to go. But Marshall's 3-1. We'll see what they are. Wins are against two teams that are 300+ in KenPom, and then also a non-D1. One loss came to a team in the 100s in KenPom. Toledo, that was. I can't say I know anything about Marshall basketball. Really off the grid a little bit, but you want to see Purdue bounce back. You want to see Purdue carry a professional approach into this, clean up some of the mistakes, take care of the basketball, play a clean game, limit the defensive breakdowns, all of that. That's progress here. That's what you need to see week in, week out. Rome wasn't built in a day. And with this team, Purdue played tremendously well against Alabama and put itself in a position to beat the number 2 team in the country. But that was Purdue playing really, really well. You don't get that every night. But these are the steps Purdue can take to a more consistent, to a more high-end, night in, night out performance. We'll see if Purdue can do that in this one. I did have a question from a longtime listener. Says, as a diehard Painter supporter, what can I point to as the most critical areas for improvement in coaching? I think some of that's just what you want to see Purdue grow on. It's the ball security. Can Purdue eliminate turnovers? You can't eliminate all of them. You're going to live with some with Braden Smith. When you're going to play out of the post with Trey Kaufman-Wren, you're going to live with some. But you can't have, 17 last night? You can't have that many. In terms of decision making, some of those passes were just leading to pick sixes that you can't make. Can Purdue be a little bit smarter making decisions with the basketball? It's things like that. Purdue's probably going to be a limited defensive team this year, no matter what. That would really require a 180 in perception for Purdue to become a dominant defensive team. But can Purdue improve a little bit there? Can you eliminate some of the coverage busts, so to speak? It's some of the minor things like that. Because you can't fix every problem you have. I think those are things you can take a look at. After the ad break, we'll talk a little bit about football heading into Friday, where things stand for Ryan Walters and company. 2024 is coming to an end, and there were so many highlights of this year. While it may not have qualified as a highlight, Did you review your insurance coverages with a professional? If not, give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me at jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com. We will go over your current insurance program for free with no obligation to even receive a quote. And we'll talk some Purdue sports in the process. Reach out today and we'll knock it out before the end of the year, no matter where you are in Indiana. Purdue at Michigan State, Friday night kickoff, 8 o'clock on Fox. This is now 5 national TV games for Purdue this year. It's not been pretty. Purdue's 0-4 in those, and the closest defeat was a 35-0 one to Oregon. I get into the TV stuff since I used to work in the industry. This just can't be what Fox, CBS, and NBC hoped for. These primetime quote-unquote matchups have not quite generated the buzz that I think these networks had hoped. The league is incredibly top-heavy right now, which you see by Purdue playing in 5 of these games, despite having a, frankly, historically bad Big Ten season. On the other sideline in this one, Michigan State is not a particularly good football team. They're 4-6, but they beat Iowa at home. Outside of that, not much particularly impressive. Close win over Maryland. Close win over Florida Atlantic, who just fired its coach. Blowout over an FCS. Not great. Lost comfortably at Illinois last week. Of course, relative to Purdue, it's impressive, but not a very great resume for Michigan State. Michigan State scores less than 20 points a game. It allows a ton of sacks, really struggles on the offensive line. One of the worst in the nation at pass pro, and that extends to the run blocking as well. Michigan State doesn't run the ball tremendously well. Aiden Childs is an interesting quarterback to watch. Very talented, very good arm. Mistake prone, though. 10 touchdowns to 11 interceptions on the year, not a particularly good ratio. But at the same time, that requires Purdue to go force interceptions. And Purdue has only forced 5 turnovers in 10 games. That's not good. That's not good at all. Couple of picks against Wisconsin, strip sack against Illinois, overthrow against Oregon, overthrow against Northwestern. It's not like Purdue's been out forcing turnovers. This might be the most limited offense that Purdue has seen since, Oregon State probably, maybe Indiana State. But keep in mind, Oregon State ran all over God's green earth against Purdue and hung up 38 points. If you haven't paid attention, Oregon State's not good. That did not age well for Purdue. Michigan State does have a solid defense. That'll present a challenge for Purdue. Look, if Purdue were a little better, you'd be talking about this as an upset spot. But Purdue's a 2-touchdown underdog, and, frankly, after what we've seen the last few months, that feels very minor. Purdue's losing Big Ten games by an average of 27 points a game. But, Michigan State does have a limited enough offense that if you think Purdue can force a few turnovers and make this thing interesting, anything can happen. Purdue has to actually go out and do that. Purdue has to find a way to create pressure. Hasn't done so very well against good competition. Secondary is, very porous, to put it mildly. Struggles to make those plays. And then Purdue has to score enough to make this game close. You're asking Purdue to do something it hasn't really done, and that is put up points. It's had the 2 big outbursts, but down to down, Purdue has really struggled on offense, and we'll see if Purdue can break through a little bit here on a frigid night in East Lansing. I'm kind of past the point of these deep previews. I don't think the appetite is there all that much, but a lot of you probably saw the National on 3 article. I think it was Pete Nakos that speculated that this is a make or break game for Ryan Walters. Look, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me to put all of the onus on this one game, but who knows? I just, after seeing what we've seen for the last 3 months, does the outcome of this game on Friday really change your perspective of what's going on within the program? I mean, is anyone really expecting a win based off what we've seen so far? It's not impossible. As I said, I don't think Michigan State's all that good, but I certainly wouldn't bet on Purdue in this one. What do you do? I mean, if this game goes poorly, if Purdue loses, say Purdue doesn't cover the 2 touchdowns, I mean, what, are you firing Ryan Walters on Saturday? Who coaches against Indiana then? I don't know that I'm necessarily sold on this idea. Anything is possible, though. I do kind of fall back on my idea from the last podcast that Purdue might have been a little caught off guard just by how poorly this season has gone and didn't really even consider a coaching change after this year until maybe at the absolute earliest, the Notre Dame debacle. But even then, I don't know that it was cemented until what we saw at Wisconsin. After the Wisconsin game, this season was pretty much lost. We'll see what happens. This is just another situation here with the reports that Purdue may make a move. It's another thing in a season full of things. And that's not a good place to be. It's just been a drama-filled season. It's been a speculation-filled season. And with where Purdue wanted to be in year 2 of this, frankly, it probably couldn't have gone a whole lot worse. We'll see what Friday brings. We'll see what kind of goes on from here. We only have 10 days left in the season. Recording this Wednesday night, 10 days from now, Purdue will take on IU. The season will wrap up. So, mercifully for a lot of people. But I'll be back later this weekend, probably Sunday. We'll talk about what happens on the gridiron on Saturday, or on Friday, excuse me. We'll talk about what happens on the hardwood on Saturday, kind of recap all of that, see where Purdue's at heading into Thanksgiving week. That's going to be a busy one. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode recapping this weekend, previewing a big Thanksgiving week of Purdue athletics. Be sure to follow on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Send in questions to the show there or over email, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. I will talk to you this weekend, guys. Until then, enjoy the games. Take care.